Well, welcome back to all our viewers at Palestine Deep Dive and from all around the world. Uh, every week, we put together a program, we have guests, we talk about the issues as are affecting the Middle East, Palestine, and beyond. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions and on the topical issues of the day. My name's Mark Seddon. I used to be the Al Jazeera correspondent. I worked for the United Nations for the Secretary General for a number of years and for the President of the General Assembly. Back in the dim and distant, and because I guess some of the questions and some of the discussion is bound to be today about the Labour Party, I was a member of the National Executive Committee and editor of Tribune. More importantly, of course, we're joined by Alexei Sayle. Welcome, Alexei. Thank you very much for joining us. Alexei needs no great introduction from me. You know him, a great comedian, an activist, a writer, philosopher, all-round good bloke. Alexei, thank you very much. We're going to open it up. I'm going to just begin by asking you something about how it all began with you, for you, I guess, and what was it really that got you interested in Palestine, in the Middle East? I understand that you were at Art College. One of your best mates was a guy called Wasim. You were an activist back then. But what was it really that pulled you in and made you got you this great interest and passion in Palestine and the Middle East?
Well, it's just sheer ambition, really, because obviously being associated with Palestine is a tremendous boon to your career, opens all kinds of doors. Well, I mean, I met Wasim when I was still at school, when I was like 16 or something, and I just found them. I suppose I just found them very attractive as people. Really, I lived with Wasim when I moved down to London, and so I just inevitably got drawn into pro-Palestinian politics, I think. I think it's just why wouldn't you if you had a sense of justice, really? I mean, the question is, why isn't everybody, I know the reasons why people don't support Palestinians, but they, it seems the clearest cut injustice, in the longest occupation in the modern world, etc. It's just a very clear-cut wrong, which was done by us. People say, why aren't you campaigning about, Myanmar? Well, I would, but we fucking caused this. Britain caused it by giving somebody else's country away, and then Israel is a kind of adjunct of the West, really. So. It's our problem to sort out. Really. We should all be concerned.
Yeah, I mean, back in the sort of 60s, 70s, early 80s, the media would often talk about bedsit trots and what have you. I don't think you were ever one of those.
Both my parents were in the Communist Party of Great Britain, and my active rebellion was to move even further to the left of them. So I became a Maoist. So I was in the Communist Party of Britain, Marxist Leninists. It was a small Maoist. We were the official franchise, though, of for revolution and chaos for a while, the People's Republic of Albania and the People's Republic of China. So although we didn't have, we didn't have many members in the UK, we had an international reach, really.
Yeah. Well, I used to have the collected works of Enver Hoxha, but I don't know what's happened to them. I need to find them. But the reason I mentioned this was because, the bedsit trots thing and what have you, this was kind of a rite of passage for an awful lot of people who went into politics as a kind of a career in a way, because a lot of them ended up in the Labour Party, which brings me neatly on to the current new leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, who I discover was something called a Pabloite. I had to look that one up. And I had to draw the comparison with the former Labour leader, currently suspended, Jay Corbyn, who, to my knowledge, was never a betsit anything. And I have to say, I'll ask you a question, but before I do, I'm just going to say that I actually voted for Keir Starmer as a member of the Labour Party, because I did actually think that he would try and bring some degree of unity to this. I'd been abroad for a long time in America, and I thought I couldn't believe what was happening in Britain. I couldn't believe the degree of hostility and hysteria, largely from his own side towards Jay Corbyn. So I voted for Keir Starmer. Now, so I'm just wondering because I know that back in 2017, you went to lobby him about Palestine. I don't think you got to see him, but I do think you said, well, I think he's all right basically on this issue. I mean, but I'm not sure if you were to go and see him tomorrow, what would you say to him?
You fucker. I think that what you're seeing in Starmer is a man without principles, really, who has only ever been focused on power. And I think certainly a lot of those ones who started out as trots, that they pretty rapidly made that journey from, because it was useful. I guess it was useful for them to be perceived as left when they were young, and then they make that journey from left wing to right wing, really. David Graeber, the late David Graeber, before he died, he wrote a very interesting article about how the most vociferous opponents of Corbyn were often those who had started out on the left and moved to the right. And he kind of theorized that because they had sold their souls for power and money, there was a kind of little core of, I'm interpreting his article slightly, but there's a kind of core inside them that knows that tiny little bit of them still, that knows that they have betrayed their former selves, that they are acting out of base motives. And so that's why they have become that's why they are the most vociferous, because they're trying to dampen that voice inside them that's saying, you are sold, you've sold out. Whereas, of course, the thing about Jeremy Corbyn was that because he'd never sold out, because he'd never betrayed his former self, he was authentic. He was a very, you'd never see a man more at peace with himself, And whereas with Starmer, you're seeing I think a wildly ambitious little man who will do anything to become prime minister, but also who, there's a little time. I mean, maybe this is psychobabble, but it seems to me there is a tiny part of him, as David Graeber theorized, there's a time that knows, knows what he has done, and so he has to silence that voice. But I also, because he's my MP, and I knew, the shenanigans of his branch, that the right wing in his branch were in this branch, where they're all kind of unpleasant people. I mean, I've got my own podcast, and I was just kind of trying to develop a thread about just how horrible right wing people are. Just horrible people. And the stories I heard, I'm sure all the narratives are available, but the stories I heard from inside that branch, just the most unpleasant, rude, aggressive, hypocritical people, those on the left. And of course, on the right, sorry, whoops, on the right, whereas of course the left are all, the reason people are on the left is because they do believe, foolishly in a way, they believe they are kind, decent people, and that's why I guess we get beaten all the time, really, because we don't. I didn't think he was going to do that. I didn't think Keir Starmer was going to enact the Stalinist purge in which every single dissenting voice would be expunged from the party.
Well, look, and we're asking for people to send their question. Alex Bustos, he says, hi, Alex, you always loved your work. Thanks for speaking out on Palestine. But getting back to what you were just saying then, there's another thing, which is, not to get too down deep and dirty on it, but one thing that always struck me back in the day, that an awful lot of the people who had kind of moved from the left and become these very sensible, the media calls them centrists. I could never quite work this out, because many of these people I came across were often far to the right of your average Shire Tory county councillor. But there we are.
Yeah.
But the one thing they did, that one thing they did sort of have in common with their past was this whole concept of democratic centralism. They inherited that bit of the old CP, if you like, but they forgot the politics, you know.
Yeah.
But look, we've got a question. Now, I have to tell you this, Alexei. This guy is no relation to me whatsoever. His name is David Seddon.
Right.
Actually, it's a former lecturer of mine from the University of East Anglia many years ago.
Not that the only people you can get to email in are relatives.
Things are hard. We're rustling up the Seddons, which is actually Roman for settlement between two hills, by the way. Anyway, so I mean Anglo-Saxon. David Seddon says, how does Alexei react to the suspension of the Labour Party of several prominent left Jewish activists in recent days?
Well, it's obvious that, I mean, because we are, and we have been for a while through the looking glass here on, you know, if sanity ever prevails, this period will be seen when Jews are being suspended for anti-Semitism. You know, it's like, how does that fucking work? You know what I mean? It's like, it's because the press stays silent on it, because they have bought into this narrative, and because it serves the interest of the establishment. You know, it's not, nobody is highlighting the absurdity of it, really, apart from, you know, a few people on the left. It is the most, there is nothing in it. It is evidence-free. These suspensions of like Moshe Makaver and Naomi they're entirely without foundation, apart from if you're trying to expunge, you know, apart from, again, if you're trying to expunge people with personal decency from the party, with people with a sense of morality, then yeah, you know. So I mean, I think we've been in this place for a while now. It is, you know, I grew up in a different age when you know, you were free to say what you wanted, really, and I don't know what difference it made, but I mean, at least you were. We live in an age now when you have to, you know, you are really. Yeah, there are a lot of people. It's not paranoia. There are, if you're on the left, there are a lot of people out to get you.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're not hearing from a lot of people today, because they are a bit nervous. And I know this for a fact because people have been in touch with me. I mean, I've got nothing to lose. I don't care what they do. But there are people who are Labour councillors, who are Labour Party members, who are saying to me, well, actually, we like what you're doing on Palestine Deep Dive and what have you. And we're very upset about what's happening. But we don't really dare speak out at the moment because and I think that is quite an extraordinary thing in itself.
It's an amazing thing. If you think, you know, if you think that exactly, people can say we are afraid to speak out on an issue which is, you know, which is just a moral issue, which you can take different positions on, but which there are perfectly reasonable grounds to speak out in a way that you are being forbidden to speak out. Obviously, if you're in the Labour Party, particularly, but even also on the outside the Labour Party, there's a fair old degree of intimidation, really, and it's you know, it's a really I never thought I would live in an age like this, really, and the only reason perhaps I'm so, you know, because I grew up in an earlier age. I don't know if I was a comedian coming up now. I don't know how I'd feel, really, whether I would. Again, you know, people are very good at fooling themselves. Whether I'd censor myself in a way, I'd self-censor, you know, and not. I don't know, because you know, you want because I've had my career, or you know, my career is kind of unassailable. I'm free to speak out. But if you're a young comic, and more, you know, what matters to you more than anything else is your career. You're desperate to express yourself, and you think, well, there's this subject that this is obviously Palestine, but also, you know, socialism in general and supporting Corbyn. There's this whole raft of subjects in which, if I speak out, my career will be in danger.
Well, Richard Baldwin says, 3 cheers for Alexei. Corbynism seems to have revealed how far right the centre has moved and exposed huge numbers of so-called anti-establishment comedians. Thank goodness Alexei is still joking for the left. Robert in London asks, Has there always been such hostility to anti-Zionist Jews within the mainstream Jewish community, and mainstream or as the left generally, that is now only being exposed as people who shine a light on it with Corbyn, etc.? Or has it been intensified over the last few years?
You asking me that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think as somebody who's always been an activist for Palestine, I think that I noticed that round about, we were very, you felt in the early 2000s, with the anti-Iraq war movement and the boycott, divestments and sanctions movement really taking off, particularly in the UK, you felt like, yeah, we're finally getting somewhere. But of course, our enemies are infinitely resourceful and highly driven, because I think they're driven in a way by, dark forces in a sense. I mean, their own internal motivation is often quite a black thing, and so they think about this all the time. They're endlessly. And so my understanding is there was a kind of the kind of Zionist lobby. They had a kind of conference in like about 2003 where there's the idea of equating pro-Palestinianism with racism, with anti-Semitism was kind of raised. And you started to sort of see examples of that. They'd kind of beta test it, as an idea of kind of accusing you of being anti-Semitic when you were advocating for Palestine. And they kind of tested it, tweaked it, refined it, and then brought, they've kind of brought that idea has been brought into the mainstream now. They're effectively any criticism of Israel, particularly from Jews, is anti-Semitic.
Yes, you see, when I was growing up, I'm just trying to think of the more totemic Labour Party figures who probably would have seen through all of this a mile away and would have knocked it back very, very quickly in short order. Michael Foots, Barbara Castles, the Ian Micados, Gerald Kaufman's, Tony Benns. These perhaps it's also because there's a poorer caliber of political leadership, because it is pretty plain to anybody watching it that Israel, the government of Israel, is a right-wing government of Israel. Look at the Likud parties in power, has a very clear agenda. You can't blame it for trying it on.
No. I tip my hat to you, sir. It's highly effective.
And so here we are in this situation where it is becoming more difficult. For instance, I just put this to you as well. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I think about 3 days ago, Lisa Nandy, who, as you know, she's the shadow foreign affairs spokesman, she spoke at a conference and she said that the BDS movement, she's never really agreed with it. Boycotts don't tend to work. You need to bring people together. And I thought, well, where would you have been back in the anti-apartheid days, Lisa? But then I looked it up just before we came on, and I discovered that she'd been saying exactly the opposite as far back as June, when she was calling for sanctions on Israel if there were further illegal settlements. So here we have it. I mean, what do we do? Go round and round in circles. What do we do with a situation like that when it's become, when the shadow foreign secretary is obviously been frightened into going to a big and complete U-turn?
Well, I can't. I mean, I was, damn you, Jeremy Corbyn, in a way, because I was happy in a haze of a drunken hour. I was before Corbyn, I was just, disillusioned with all kind of parliamentary politics. And then for a while, Jeremy briefly made me believe that the Labour Party, could be a force for good in the world. And then, of course, now I'm back to believe. I think it's a hateful organisation. I can't. I mean, it seems. I mean, I was talking about this on my own podcast, but when lockdown started, I found myself almost in a kind of demonic possession, reading all these histories of the Labour Party. I guess because I wanted to understand what had happened, reading about the same events over and over again. I'm sure you're, the crucial moments. I mean, both, and I found partly that that it's not the first time that this has happened. That the first time that a left-wing Labour leader took over the party was in 1935, and he was again ousted by the snivelling cowards of the PLP. And then Michael Foot, who, I always had problems with. So I can't. I mean, I actually think that. I mean, the left has got a terrible record of founding socialist parties in Britain, so that it's the auguries are not good. But on the other hand, there are 100,000, 200,000 really pissed off people now because of the maltreatment of Corbyn, and there is, I wonder whether for the first time there is a possibility of a kind of, I mean, and whether any of those socialist campaign groups, and particularly Jeremy, would make the leap to another party. I guess not really, but it seems like there is. I mean, I think it wouldn't have to be people from our generation really that we're eternally discredited. I think that really it'd have to be young people.
Well, who knows? You can come back into credit again. Let's hope. But the thing is,
we can be. They can ask us for advice, but
But what strikes me. This is what I think that you're hitting on a kernel of truth there, because all these years, I mean, I knew Michael Foot ever so well. We had the Tribune office, and I'm old enough to remember how he was treated. And then all of them, every Labour leader in my lifetime, apart from Tony Blair, has had it from the media, big time. The difference with Jay Corbyn was that he had it from his own side.
Yeah,
astonishing level of vitriol, hysteria, which sections of the media are quite happy to conflate. And so we are in this situation whereby, I think you're right, the two wings of this Labour, Harold Wilson said that it needed two wings to fly. These two wings are clearly incompatible now. And you do begin to wonder. I mean, you've also been very good over the years because you've said, the left has been terrible with its infighting. Look how disciplined the right can be. And that's quite true. So if there is something that comes out of all of this, perhaps there's proportional representation eventually, and perhaps at last this horrible marriage of two relatives that hate each other, two family members that hate each other, can break up. And there can be something fresh and new.
Because I don't know. I mean, I was completely uninterested in the Labour Party.
Well, I think perhaps we should move off from the Labour Party, actually. I think you're probably right. So Thomas Morin, he says, I think he's talking about, he's been to, and I mean, I'm going to ask you, I'm guessing that you've been to Israel, Palestine, you've been to the West Bank, and no?
I haven't actually. No, I've been to Jordan. That's all. It's the closest I've got.
We had Gideon Levy on the other day, the journalist from Haaretz, and he was saying part of the problem in Israel, amongst the younger generation especially, is none of them, unlike him, get to travel to the West Bank and actually see in what's been happening. But Thomas Morin says, having been to the area, and it's such a small area, it seems to me inevitable that neither population is going to disappear. So one state or some form of Swiss binational state would be a solution. However, as a result of adopting the working definition on anti-Semitism, this is considered racist, apparently. Well, I don't know about that. But anyway, his question is, how do universities and associated organizations work to express the alternative messages? And does social media help or hinder progressing these messages?
I don't know. Well, I think that obviously there's a great push. I profoundly disagree with the IHRA definition. I think it's a tool. It's clearly being used as a tool to attempt to silence pro-Palestinian voices, and so that's a problem, and it's part of the assault on the left, broader left, and particularly pro-Palestinian voices. But yeah, I think I haven't believed, if I ever did, for years in the two-state solution. And that's one of the things that you sort of think is, you feel so sorry for the Palestinians because they're betrayed by the other Arab nations. They're betrayed by their own leadership. The PA itself is corrupt and does Israel's dirty work for it a lot, and this is a one-state solution. I don't know how it's achievable, but seems to me, wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if all races and religions could live in this land, some, whatever you call it, Israel, it doesn't matter what you call it, but if everybody could live with equal human rights from the Mediterranean to the Jordan Valley, wouldn't it be just the most? Wouldn't it be, that would be a real refutation of hate? That would be a real beacon against racism if you could have a state where Arabs and Christians and Jews all live together in
Yes.
harmony.
I mean, Alexei, I mean, you'll know that when people push this out as a possibility, people like you, people like me, it's a total impossibility. It will never happen. But then, of course, you think about South Africa and you think about the apartheid regime. You think about the Bantustans and what have you, and you think about how everything came together. South Africa is a multiracial democracy. It's not perfect, but it's a multiracial democracy. Israel, Palestine could, as you say,
Yeah.
secular, one state, because of course there are
Yeah.
Jews, there are Christians, there are Muslims, and there are none of the above, all living
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, it would be a truly beautiful place, wouldn't it be marvelous? It's obviously, there's a lot of people invested in making sure that doesn't happen, but
Yeah, Richard Shepherd says Jews, Muslims, and Christians all living in the same region, just like the good old days. I'm not quite sure when those good old days were, but I assume that was at the time of the Ottoman Empire or before. I can't say that I'm a great expert. So I'm just thinking also, I mean, we're seeing the dying days of the Trump administration. I mean, I know he hasn't acknowledged that he's lost, but he does appear to be going. But his Secretary of State, Pompeo, was, of course, in Israel the other week and traveled up to the occupied Golan Heights. Do you think that, do you think that there's going to be much difference with the Biden administration coming in? Do you think that'll make much difference? Will the embassy be moved back to Tel Aviv from Jerusalem?
I doubt it, really. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in any way on United States politics, but I mean, I think obviously the AIPAC and the various pro-Israel lobby groups are very powerful, and that it would cause, as we Jews say, it would cause Biden a lot of suddas if he did move the embassy back to Tel Aviv. So I guess I can't really, in a sense. I mean, given that he is, he's a centrist, as we talked about before, at best, really. That he's not going to really want that earache, I suspect. So, I mean, it's a deliberate attempt to create facts on the ground, isn't it? I know. I mean, great if he does. Kamala Harris, I think, said that she would restore aid to the Palestinian. I mean, that's just something that keeps them in their place, in a sense, keeps them docile. But I guess it's a good move, really.
Yeah, I mean, Pompeo also. I mean, my take on it is it hasn't been a huge success, but the boycott and divestment and sanctions campaign, which has been saying there should be sanctions against companies, as you know, operating out of the occupied territories, which has been pushed back on by the Labour Party, which seen here, and by Pompeo, who said that actually this campaign should be classified as being anti-Semitic. I mean, that pushed the boundaries yet further. I mean, what do you think about that? What you said about what Pompeo said?
Well, I mean, it's all part of the same nonsense, isn't it? Really, to classify a peaceful mode of protest in which you don't buy some dates, but buy some other dates. That by the act of not buying some dates, you are indulging in an act of hatred, of Jew hate, of the most vicious kind, by not buying those dates. I mean, it's bullshit, isn't it? It's nonsense. If you examine it on that level, it's egregious bleeding nonsense, and but it gets traction because powerful people say it. If powerful people say nonsense, it's taken seriously, and the media, the right-wing media, everybody's invested in buying into this nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I think U.S. military aid to Israel is something like $3.5 billion a year. It might even be more.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a wider question, and it's being asked by some of the people who are sending questions in, which is about military spending per se. We're seeing an increase in this Tory government's decision to substantially increase defence spending. How do we afford all of that at a time of austerity and a time of pandemic? Yeah, how on earth can we afford all of this?
Well, I'm an anomaly really in on the left, I think, in that I'm actually fascinated as a lefty, but I'm fascinated by military equipment. So I'm probably the only comedian who has a routine about the McDonnell Douglas Lockheed Lightning, whatever it's the Lightning F-35B, Lightning II F-35B. So I am fascinated by military hardware, and I watch all those programs on the yesterday about the war and stuff, and I can tell you the difference between the Panzer V and the Panzer IV and the Panzer VI and Jagdpad. So I'm kind of so I have quite a deep knowledge of military equipment. It's interesting, isn't it, that one of the things that Eisenhower, in retrospect, of course, is the last US president to act against Israel by making them withdraw from Suez and so on forth, that he warned about. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know, are aware of this. I'm not saying anything particularly revelatory, but he warned against the military-industrial complex, that he could see that the United States, which hadn't really had an arms industry before the Second World War, that this industry had taken on a life of its own, and it had become very powerful. It's incredible. I mean, it's amazingly profitable, because and also you're making. I mean, one of the things that's always been like kind of is most of the stuff that the British Armed Forces are equipped with is fucking garbage. It's not even. It's made by one company for a start, which is British Aerospace. It's various arms, the ships. We've got these destroyers that can't sail when it's hot. We've got these aircraft carriers with no aircraft on them, and the F-35 that's supposed to equip them is, it's called the plane that broke the Pentagon. It's a piece of garbage. We had our assault rifle, the SA-80, which ejected hot shells, and if it was a left-handed shooter, it ejected hot cartridge cases into the ear of the soldier firing it. Boots that fell apart. I mean, it's so.
Well, Alexei, I have to say, my dad was in the army. I've still got his army shoes. They're still going strong 40 years ago. They must be so old that they're. But anyway, look, I've got a question.
Yeah, but if he'd served in the Gulf War, they would have fallen apart.
Oh yes, yeah.
They had trainers made in Taiwan. They would have lasted. Them sort of trainers you buy from a guy, on the beach in Gambia. It was the new stuff.
He was in the operations room in Cyprus at the time of one of the threatened Turkish invasions, and he got a call from the Turkish commander, and he said. So, excuse me, are you the officer in charge? And my dad said, yes. He said, well, we're a bit concerned. We're about to invade, but we think our maps might be a bit out of date. Can you update us on where the British sovereign bases are? Anyway, look, Richard Shepard says, and this isn't a pun, because you were referred to Eisenhower there. Eisenhower's warning was his parting shot. And it was, yes, it was.
Well, it was amazingly prophetic, really. It is, and in a way, at least the fast food industry just depends for its expansion and its profits on people eating fatty garbage, The thing about the arms industry is it needs the military industrial complexes. It needs people to kill. It needs war. It needs to create wars, and obviously also is the Israeli arms industry is very plugged into the worldwide. Elbit systems and so on. It's very much plugged into the worldwide arms network.
If I may, Thomas Morin has just sent this. He said, "Is it the case that Israel, who has been accused of showcasing its battles in Gaza as a means to sell weaponry to third countries as battle tested?" I mean, I don't know much about the Israeli arms industry. Is it a great export industry as well?
Yeah, it's very. it's getting larger and larger. Yes, there's this firm called Elbit Systems that makes drones, and I think I might be wrong, but I think that the in the recent conflict between Azerbaijan and the Armenians, that they were using Israeli, the Azeris, the Muslim Azeris, they were using Israeli drones. I think I might be wrong about that, but I feel yes, they are very, and yeah, they've had a chance to battle test their equipment.
I'm just thinking now. I mean, there's a change of administration in Washington. There is going to be some change. There will be a difference, not a huge difference. A lot of people seem to expect, but there will be at the UN a new US UN ambassador who'll actually be serious multilateralist. I mean, do you think that the world begins to become a bit more focused once again on at least trying to ensure that UN resolutions are followed through, and more pressure is put upon Israel to actually abide by them?
Really, I've seen very little evidence of that, but you know, it would be nice if it did happen. And obviously, the forces of the right in Israel are fighting very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Really, I suppose you wouldn't be on the left if you didn't believe that impossible stuff can happen. But it would be nice, you know. It would be lovely to think that there would be some progress. There are powerful forces trying to ensure that there won't be.
There's a question here from Alex. Hi, Alexei. Can you speak something about Edward Said and what you thought about him? And what influence did he have on you, if any?
Well, I didn't. No, he seemed. Well, I met him a few times. He seemed a very powerful speaker. I chose him for. I did that thing. It was very unpleasant. What's he called? Matthew
Paris.
Called Great Lives. Yeah, Matthew Paris. I chose Edward Said for my Great Lives, and then realized I'm a bit prone to comedians. We sometimes have a tremendous sense. We can talk with great authority without knowing anything, and so I chose Edward Said for my Great Lives, and then only realized when I got to the studio that I didn't really know anything about him, apart from having met him a few times and thinking he seemed like he'd made some good speeches that I hadn't read. Orientalism, that I really knew. It was actually, it was an object lesson for me, and not one I necessarily that I should at least bone up before I. But I think he was, I think he was a force for good. But I'm not the expert.
Well, I did listen to you on Edward Said, and we didn't prompt that question either, and I thought you were pretty good on him. Look, here's Roger Rees.
It shows my ability. It shows the comedians' ability to busk when they know fuck all about a subject. So,
well, here's Roger Rees. He asks, Alexei, how do you come to terms with the religious aspect? I saw an interview with a Jewish settler in the West Bank. He was asked, why do you want to build your settlement on Palestinian land? And he was baffled by this. He replied, because God gave it to us. So how on earth do you address that kind of response?
It's difficult, isn't it, really? Again, human beings have a tremendous capacity to lie to themselves about their own motives, really. I remember a Palestinian saying to me, talking about the settlements, and saying, who those settlers are is often people who failed in the United States. They're people whose life, particularly in the United States, hasn't gone that well. And so they've lit on being a settler as finding somebody, to punch down, another cliche. But I mean, they found somebody that they can pick on. So they invent this idea that, that God gave them the land, and it means that you don't have to examine your motives. I mean, I think that I think that I and a lot of people on the left, the best people on the left, we continually examine our motives. We say, is this fair? Is this just? But if you're some racist, really, some racist settler, and you've kind of invented this idea that God gave you the land, and that God, and I mean, the settlers are not alone in that. There's a lot of evangelicals, and a lot of people who believe the same. I think it's very difficult to argue against. Really, it's an unfortunate aspect of the human self, human nature that people.
Yes, and
Out of base kind of psychological motives, they give themselves a kind of free pass.
And you could also say there's nothing particularly new about this, because my guess is that a lot of those settlers who went to Rhodesia or Kenya or Algeria or Angola, they probably said, "Well, the Queen gave me this,"
Yeah, and the Queen is anointed by God. It's not a. How you deal with it, I have no idea.
Palestine, but at the same time, we have been able to historically say that, for instance, settler regimes in Algeria had to either accommodate or, bad things would happen, and bad things did happen in Algeria. Most of the French colons, as you know, ended up leaving. The same in Angola. South Africa was very different. Different reasons, I suppose. The Afrikaners had been there an awful lot longer, but in the longer run, but it's very difficult now to talk about this and this without causing enormous degrees of controversy and upset and what have you. But the reality is that Israel is, for the most part, and more recently, a settler state. And so to reach an accommodation would seem to me, to most people, I guess, to make great sense for everybody. And it shouldn't really be too controversial to say that.
No, it's certainly, you could, even if it should be a notion that you could discuss, but of course it is, there's a lot of work going on to make it, to obscure that reality, or even arguing that reality, really. Yeah.
Look, there's a question here. This is from Sam Bahur. Sam says, if you could advise the Palestinian leadership, and this is a new role for you, you see. If you could advise the Palestinian leadership on one thing they could do in the UK to advance the struggle, what would you tell them?
Oh, I know. I mean, I think that, I don't know. I mean, I think there is a, in a sense, there is a Palestinian Mandela, and that is, I always get me Barghoutis mixed up. Omar Barghouti, the one who's not in jail. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it seems to me to be, somebody who's a wonderful speaker. When else, he's fluent in English, which is, an advantage. Unfortunately, it has, really is funny. Has really, but he's dedicated to peaceful struggle and to civil society, and he seems to me, I mean, in my limited experience, I don't, he seems to me to be the perfect representative of Palestine, but because he's not part of the PA, that they conspire against him. I mean, I think I may be being unfair to them, but he doesn't get any help from them. And obviously, clearly, the Israelis do everything they can to. He was invited to speak, wasn't he, at the last Labour Party conference, and he got his visa from the UK government the day after the conference finished. I'd put Omar Barghouti in charge. He seems like, as far as I can tell, he seems to talk tremendous.
There we are. There's the advice. Well, now look here. Guess what? We've heard from somebody called Ian Williams in New York. You thought that might happen? Ian says, do you ever get the feeling that, bad as things were when you started lampooning idiocy and reaction, now cynicism and hypocrisy have overfulfilled the plan? Isn't it a challenge deriding them now? And where is the indignation when people like Lisa Nandy disappear up their own rectum to applause? And as for Michael Gilligan's question, which I don't think we've got to, our famous CPBML ordered me to reverse my vote and I left. It's a good job they never discovered anti-Semitism as a control mechanism.
Yes, well, Ian Williams is a friend of both of us. So he was, when I was in the CPBML in Liverpool, he was our Enver Hoxha. He was the Scouse. Ian was the Scouse Enver Hoxha. Uh, yeah, it's I mean, it's a we are. I've never known a world like this. Really, it's. I mean, in a sense, it's for somebody like me. It's a tremendous opportunity.
You were bloviating about Brother Williams in New York.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I was saying about my rate. I mean, Sandwich Bar that it trended at #1 on Twitter, which for a you know with a Radio 4 show where the usual demographic is people 85 plus, it was unheard of because, Twitter is a relatively young person and it gets a massive, younger demographic. And episode 1 was an entirely pro Corbyn episode. And people were just saying, "Thank God somebody's saying this." So, in a sense, for me, it's an opportunity, to capitalize, to get massive viewing figures or listening figures because I'm the only person doing it. I'd like there to be somebody else. I don't, but it's.
Yeah, Alexi, on this point of you mentioned the sandwich shop. Thomas Morin says some of the nicest food I ever had was Palestinian, albeit not cardamom coffee. Palestinian salad is very zesty, and in general, there's plenty of extraordinary food for a veggie to dine on. Alexi, did you try the cuisine during your time in Jordan? If so, what do you think? And are you as frustrated as I am when this cuisine and food culture is relabeled as Israeli?
Yeah, well, that's one of those kind of wars, isn't it? Where Israel is trying to claim a lot of Palestinian cuisine for itself, really. Yeah, I think when I did a documentary in Syria years ago, and I labeled it as East Germany with hummus, really. But which didn't endear me to the Assad regime, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the best food in the world, Arab food. I mean, it's not just exclusive to Palestine, but and it's sort of one of the things I like is it's the same for kind of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's bread and labneh and hummus, and it's an amazing cuisine, baba ganoush, and yeah, it is the best cuisine in the world in many ways, I think.
Well, look, we've only got a few more minutes, but there's still a few questions coming through. Jenny Hardacre has a question for you here, Alexi. Is there anything that we can do to counter the fact that the mainstream media has largely closed all opportunities for us to expose what's really going on, both in Palestine and in the Labour Party? She says it's infuriating. If we ever manage to get on the BBC, this is JVL, I think that's Jewish Voices for Labour, then people are not even allowed to complete a sentence.
Extraordinary. Yeah, I remember talking to Jackie Walker once years ago about her. She was when she was being interviewed on Channel 4 News by Cathy Newman, and Cathy Newman's her voice wasn't just her voice was right up here in their chest, it was full of anger, rage at Jackie, just so come on up here, and yeah, and there's the example of the other week when Louise Ellman was on, and she was hardly interrupted, and then Jenny Manson of JVL talked and was interrupted 13, 14 times by Kirsty Walker. It's a problem, really. I think that what you have to do is really try and all those left-wing news sites, the Canary, Squawk Box, Novara Media. They are, we have to put our efforts into them, really, and give them money, subscribe, listen to them. I think that I think that there has been a process of capture by the right of the BBC News and Current Affairs in recent years, and you can't, occasionally if you do get on, maybe also media training, though. Maybe we should just get some slick media. I mean, it's one of the things about Jeremy. I mean, God bless him. He wasn't the most adept at. I mean, he could be good on the media, but he could also, when an idiot is asking you idiotic questions, to lose your temper is a reasonable thing, really. But unfortunately, I think that you have to be. If we could have somebody leading the left who was really. I always think for instance, when Bernie Sanders, they tried to paint Bernie Sanders with the pro kind of Russia, pro Putin thing. And he just said, Bernie Sanders said, Putin's a thug. Putin's a thug. And I just thought, yeah, There's none of that equivocation about, well, if we look at the just say Putin's a thug, and Trump is in his pocket, not me. But I just thought that kind of, I just thought that
there was a lack of robustness.
Jewish, you need that kind of none of that fannying about, but just get to it,
Well, yeah, there was a lack of robustness. I mean, around the Schiphol poisonings, I mean, it could have been that all could have been dealt with so much better with a
Yeah, I agree. So we need, I mean, I think support the Canary and Squawk Box and all that.
David Tedden, my namesake but no relative, says also please watch Al Jazeera. I used to work for them. They're very good. Much better coverage of all world issues, much better than the BBC or CNN. Well, I just have to say, I haven't been watching BBC World, or I haven't listened to the BBC World Service for some time, but I'm kind of struck now that at 6 o'clock, we do not get any news from beyond these shores unless we're very lucky. We might get 2 minutes of it. It's a quite extraordinary thing, the infantilization of things and how everything's become so parochial and domesticized.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously I mean, I did that bit in my own podcast about, if you've noticed that Laura Koonsberg is actually an anagram of lying Tory bastard. I mean, it's, I think that the correspondents have become much more right wing, basically, and it's a problem.
It was certainly
comedy department's still great. The BBC. The BBC does great comedy. It's only the news.
Of course, it does. But they've got to get you back on doing more of it. And the thing is, but we'll have to bring this to a close fairly shortly. But if I'm all right, I'm just going to take one or two more little questions. Phil says right now there are 1 million children under siege in Gaza. Corbyn was openly against all of this. Surely most sensitive people in the UK would equally be against this too, if they heard politicians talking unapologetically about it. Should Corbyn have been louder about all of this instead of shying away from it, he says?
I think he should, yeah. I think that I think appeasement never gets you anywhere. And I think in the early days that his advisors and himself, they thought they could get away with toning down his more radical aspects. And I think it's a mistake. You can't appease, if you try and appease bullies, they will, as we have seen, they will just take more and more and more from you until they've taken everything from you. So, yeah, I think that he should have been robust. I mean, it's difficult, when you're in the middle of, it's hard to think straight sometimes when you're under such assault. But I think that certainly the lesson that the left needs to take, one of those lessons is don't give an inch, don't back off at all, don't betray your own principles, and always just state your own position unequivocally, because anything else they'll have you.
Well, look, actually, we've got people getting even more topical. Paul Maloney is saying, due to our one or two slight technical issues, this is what happens when there's no national broadband. What do we want, says Richard Shepherd? Faster broadband. When do we? Yeah, okay. On it goes. So listen, we should say one or two people say also subscribe to Palestine Deep Dive. Yes, absolutely, we should. Of course, we should. And also, we have here Lisa Stevens saying, "Hey, Lexi and Linda, hope you're well."
Hi, Linda. See you Sunday.
There you go. Yes. Diane Pearson, what about your mum? What does that mean? Do you know, Diane?
My mum, Molly Sale, Comrade Molly Sale. Yeah, well, they used to.
Diane's Luke's mum.
Oh, Diane's Luke's mum. Hi. Sorry. Linda has to tell me. Yeah, she's one of the best people. That's one of the things I talked about, really. I mean, one of the great things about, particularly my wife getting involved in the left on the Labour Party in this area was the beautiful, beautiful people that I met on the left. They are the best people in the world, the kindest, sweetest, most, often work in the caring services, and to have a little shit like Keir Starmer labeling them as racists, it's the most spectacular injustice. But they were. It was a real privilege to meet Luke and his mom.
Yes, I'm just actually going to try and. I was just trying to find something that I was going to, because of course you mentioned Keir Starmer there very briefly. Angela Rayner is the new deputy leader, and she was talking about suspending thousands and thousands of people if necessary. I was trying to work out where could this all go. And I actually wrote to her and I said, look, if you can just try and be a proper deputy leader again, I'm going to give you this.
Right, that's a.
There you are. There's an old Michael.
Socialist memorabilia. How much is that worth?
That's what we
When
like.
did you buy that?
Old Labour memorabilia.
You've got one of Hugh Gaitskell's suits as well in a cupboard.
Well, his coat, of course. I mean, here's a classic piece of very early sort of fake news. You know, the whole of the mainstream media back in the early 80s was saying, absolutely outrageous, there's Michael Foot at the cenotaph in a donkey jacket.
Mm.
Well, I know for a fact because he showed me this coat, and I said to him, can we try and raffle it for Tribune funds? He said, no. He said, because it's a very expensive Jaeger coat. And in fact, it was brand new when I put it on, and the Queen Mother came up to me. She said, Mr. Foot, that's a marvellous new coat you've got. Absolutely the right thing for this inclement weather. So there you go.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, then he says, thanks so much. It's very nice hearing other sane people talking sense. As long as we don't just talk amongst ourselves, we must talk to lots of other people. Dorothy Macedo says, I remember, what does Dorothy say? Dorothy says, I'm so old, I remember when the opposition voted against the government. Dangerous stuff.
What a crazy idea that is. Isn't that nuts? Why would they do that? My God.
Yeah, so there we go. Well, there we are. Dorothy and I had many battles. We were on the right side together all those years ago. Anyway, look, thank you. Thank you from everybody. We're getting lots of people thanking you for taking time out today, Alexei. It's been great having you.
Yeah, sorry about my problem.
Appreciate it.
No, you're welcome.
You've lifted a lot of people's spirits. And we hope to have you back on again. Max Basso said thanks so much to you both. Thomas says thanks for your time. Richard Baldwin's given us a clenched fist. Applause and smiles from Anne Phipps. David Portier's cheers both. I think, Alexei, get the second podcast up quick.
Did it this morning. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alexei. And that's all for us here at Palestine Deep Dive. We're going to take a break until early in the new year. We've got guests already lined up, hopefully for then. Ronnie Casrills from South Africa is going to be on. John Pilger's going to be on. A whole bunch of people. We're keeping up the fight here and look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you again, Alexei, and keep well, everybody.
Thank you.